First GoPro and now DJI, both going after Insta360. Sony pulling their memory cards off the shelves and only 2 new cameras released all year. It's been a week. DJI sued Insta360 for patent infringement. As it happens, a few engineers who left DJI got hired by Insta360. Both companies are actually in Shenzhen.
Can I give a tip to both founders and CEOs? A very naive one, but guys, how about talking to each other? You are in the same town.
Meanwhile, Sony suspends nearly all their memory card sales, and Panasonic finally released a new compact camera based on a model from 2018.
It's a very friendly way to say it's almost the same, it's cost more, and it features less.
Patent wars, a camera memory card crisis, and much more. Episode 110. Let's get right into it.
This is Focus Check, the weekly CineTech podcast.
Welcome to episode 110 of CineD Focus Check. We have a full episode of news this week, Johnny, right?
That's right.
Should we get started?
Yeah, let's go.
Let's go. All right. So today we're proud to have an update to our CineD databases, which is arguably one of the most prominent features on our website that people love to use, the camera databases. And we've listened to a lot of feedback and pushed a big update to the databases. So we go through what's new. We also talk about patents again. Last week we talked about DJI versus GoPro, actually.
That's right.
GoPro versus DJI, and GoPro versus Insta360. And this week we talk about DJI versus Insta360. So the three of them, we can already tell there's a lot of kerfuffle going on.
Yeah.
We'll talk about Sony suspending nearly all memory card sales, which is big news. A lot of people getting a little bit scared if they can't get any cards anymore.
I think it's time to go back and film on film.
Yeah, I'm sure. The way things are going, it's going to be cheaper at some point. That's still maybe if the AI bubble increases for another 2 years, that's where we'll be. We'll also talk about a new MZed course that we just launched. It's called Before You Roll: Shot Listing Essentials by Leland Crane, and the founder and CEO of Shotcraft, but also a cinematographer in his own right. We'll talk about what that course is all about and his platform, Shotcraft. We'll also mention the new compact camera from Panasonic, the LUMIX TZ300 or ZS300, depending on where you live. We'll talk about the new CG Image AF 35mm f2.2 SG. Did I see SG? CG. SG. New Pancake lens 35mm. We'll talk about DNG now being an international ISO standard 20 years or more than 20 years after its introduction and what that might mean for filmmakers. We'll talk about the firmware update for the Fujifilm GFX100 II, which is now adding compatibility to the FUJINON GF3290 power zoom lens. We'll talk about new ZGCINE Sony NPF batteries and the Rush's video platform, which is they're touting themselves as a European alternative to Vimeo, with a lot of people, of course, being disappointed where Vimeo has gone. We've talked about this before. There is a room for improvement, I would say. And last but not least, also IronGlass Canon FD AIR Rehousing, which was announced. We'll talk about that. But let's get started with the databases update, shall we? So the camera databases, like I said, is arguably
one of the most visited pages within our site.
It's kind of unique. I mean, we managed over the last 10, 15 years to establish almost like a standard in standardized camera sensor testing. We always test for dynamic range, rolling shutter, and latitude, exposure latitude. And that goes, to kind of counter the manufacturer's claims of what, the latitude and dynamic range and rolling shutter actually.
Marketing is king.
And it's not easy to compare those things because, of course, we're dealing with different sensor sizes. We also have to take into account different frame rates and so on. But we are trying our best, and it's really always the same kind of test. But it takes a lot of time to do each one of those tests, which we publish in the CineD lab tests, which is a separate section where Gunther actually writes up in detail on how each camera performs. And all those results go into the camera databases. The camera databases are also more than that. They offer technical details about cameras. And then also we have lens databases and the lens coverage tool. And of course, because those tools are used so much and a lot of information is constantly added, we also get a lot of feedback from users. So we really invest a lot of time and money into the development of this with our development company. So let's just go through what's new. So basically, we are improving the dynamic range and rolling shutter rankings. As many of you know who have used the databases, is that the ranking of the dynamic range results, sometimes it became a little bit complicated because basically the way it works, we entered all the results of the cameras into the back end after the testing concluded. And then this ranking tool basically, of course, just mathematically ranked based on results.
Which the end thing was like almost comparing apple to oranges.
Exactly. It was difficult because it meant that different frame rate results were vastly different sometimes, which meant that, sometimes you had, it just didn't make sense to put it in there. So what we did now, and also the internal raw recording, when we started this tool was kind of a niche, and now it's kind of standard. Almost every manufacturer offers some, except for Sony, offers some kind of internal compressed raw recording in their cameras now. And that also kind of twisted those results a little bit. So what we did now is we separated them out. So basically you can now filter the test results to only show raw dynamic range results. So let me open this image here. And you can either have all results or raw only. You also have more details about the cameras and the resolution and the codec and the frame rate that was used in this ranking. So you have context that you see, which will make it more visible actually why those results are so different. Also, of course, sometimes some crop modes actually deliver better results than the full frame mode and so on. So all of that is now visible in these rankings, which, it's like an explanation. And it doesn't give this, because those rankings used to be very basic. They just showed the camera name and you didn't know exactly which mode was used. So this is now very transparent and I think very clear now what the differences are here. Also, we are adding we added a lot more information to the ranking tables with additional data points in the dynamic range and rolling shutter results. So now when you go to this overview, don't forget that each one of those results, or I think 90% of those results, have their own lab test article, which is also always linked, of course, as soon as you click on one of them. But now you have more context, and the context actually allows you to understand better which kind of result we're talking about. Because, we have cameras that have hundreds of different modes. We cannot test every single mode. We usually try to test the ones that promise the best results and the best kind of codec, usually, sometimes also a compressed codec just to compare.
But we're still listening. If you guys found a certain, or you have a really interest, let's say in APS-C mode instead of full frame, because you suspect that it gives better results, we are actually asking the cameras back. And then we are running to the lab to try to redo this. It just takes time.
Which we're about to do for the Canon EOS C50, exactly, right. Because we know that we didn't know at the time of testing, but then it became clear that the APS-C mode actually yields a better result, or is supposed to yield a better result the way it's working. And so now we are getting the camera back to retest that. It's just going to take a little bit of time. And this result, of course, will also show up as soon as we have it in the databases. Also, that's something I'm really proud of. We added a summary inside. So basically, the database is really a tool that you need to know your stuff, right? Like, I think a lot of people who are not so familiar with a lot of the terminology. We're a little bit overwhelmed by the data. So what we've tried is to add data points and information that actually explains better what people are seeing. And one of those things is we're adding summaries to the dynamic range and rolling shutter results. This is a custom algorithm that we've employed that is automatically summarizing the results from the lab test article in one sentence, which just basically tells you look at the dynamic range result of one camera. It, of course, tells you the ranking like before, and then you can click on the check ranking to see the comparison. But it also gives you this one sentence that explains exactly what the result was in a specific, for example, full frame mode at 25 frames per second. The Canon EOS C50 achieved a maximum dynamic range result of 12.5 stops at SNR2 in the 4096 by 2160 resolution in the codec XFAVC, ISO 800 and C-Log2. So it's very clear in prose language what we actually tested and what the result was. And this is automatically generated based on the lab test. And you have this for every single one of the results in the database now for both dynamic range and rolling shutter separately. Very transparent. And while we're talking about explanation, we also added, first of all, of course, we have an article that is always linked in every single one of the lab tests on how we actually perform those tests. But for people who don't see this, who just go straight to the databases, there still were sometimes a few questions. So what we did is we added explanation boxes to all the different kind of testing methodologies we do. So there's an explanation on how the dynamic range test results are achieved very briefly with a couple, like 3 paragraphs and some screenshots, the rolling shutter test results as well, how we actually also measure the recording modes and times, because that's also manual work. Like literally, Florian is who's now on paternity leave. Hi, Florian, in case you listen to this while you're not changing diapers. Hi, we miss you. But he's taking a camera and spends literally days going through all the different combinations of resolution, frame rates, codecs, and so on. I mean, there's some cameras that have hundreds of combinations.
We see him sweating more often than not when sitting and going through all the data. It's crazy.
I mean, if you talk about cameras like Panasonic cameras, for example, I mean, there's an almost infinite amount of combinations, or red camera that can shoot, you can shoot with. So basically all of those are manually checked and gone through. And then also, of course, recording times that are available, like effective recording times at each one of those resolutions, frame rates, codecs, and so on, depending on your media that you're using. So that takes a lot of time as well. And that goes into the recording modes and times database. And then also the different recording formats are explained. And while we're talking about recording formats, there was a feature actually that was kind of hidden before in the lens coverage tool, is the ability to compare how much sensor crop is actually used when selecting specific recording formats. So basically, because you change the recording format on a sensor, that can actually also crop into your sensor without you noticing, because not all the cameras are explicit about that actually. So this is now transparent in the lens coverage tool. So you can choose all the different recording formats here now on each one of the cameras, and then see exactly what will be the crop applied depending on that format. And that's actually quite useful, I think, because again, this is something that's often not very transparent in the camera menus themselves. Because, I mean, depending on the camera manufacturer, very often you would also select the resolution and the codec independent of each other in different menus. And then depending on what the codec is, you have a different kind of crop and so on. It's crazy. And this makes it very transparent. So once you are prepping your shoot, actually this makes sense. So last but not least, if you want to stay on top of everything we add to the databases and our lab test, we have a separate newsletter that's actually become quite popular for the last, a year maybe? Half year at least. This is just once a month in your inbox. No BS, just clear information of what we changed, what we added, what was added to the databases, what was added to the lab tests. We just sent out one today actually, because usually we send it at the end or beginning of the month. And so just sign up. The link is also in the article that is linked in the show notes here to subscribe to the database update newsletter. So very proud of this update, and I think it adds a lot more usability. We also, of course, we try to test everything as much as possible before it goes live on our staging server. If there are bugs, please feedback, send us an email at podcast@cined.com or office@cined.com, or just comment on this article, because we are already in touch on some of the feedback. Yeah.
Do you want to mention and briefly talk about if you want to use this, we are actually asking people to register to our newsletter.
Exactly. So if you are, that's the only, so far, again, it really costs us an arm and a leg to maintain those databases. We don't ask for much, but the only thing is, if you are registered to the databases, there is a requirement to receive the newsletter. That's it. That of course gives us the ability to have your personal email address, which helps us to serve you this newsletter. That's the only requirement we have.
Yeah. And please understand, the broader picture is that we earn money with advertisement, and of course this is helping us if we have greater number of audience to communicate with you guys. So that's just a way to support us. So before you say no, before you throw it into the spam, before you get upset or anything, please understand this is a free service and we're doing our best, and we need your support here.
And we never sell any data. We don't. We like all the data we get, all the emails we get is just ours for our own usage. So even if an advertiser sends a partner email, it's through us. It never goes directly to them, and we are very, very conservative, I would say, with the amount of kind of emails like that we send at all. So basically, it's the weekly newsletter and it's the monthly database newsletter. Quick sponsor break. The lighting in our Focus Check podcast studio is supplied by Nanlite. That glow you see behind us, those rich purples washing through our vintage camera collection, that's their PavoTube 2 6XR tubes, magnetically attached to the shelves. 8 of them, and they all charge simultaneously in one rugged case. Pull them out, they turn on and sync automatically. Our key lights are Nanlite FC500Bs. 520 watts of beautifully accurate soft lighting through rapid 90 parabolic softboxes that literally deploy in 5 seconds. I'm not exaggerating. One motion, they're open. One trigger pull, they collapse flat. The PavoTube 30Cs on the floor handle our edge light and that curtain separation in the back, with barn doors keeping everything precisely controlled. And every single fixture in this room we control from one app on an iPad, the NanLink app. For a weekly show that's not a luxury, it's a necessity. Check out Nanlite's full range of LED lighting on nanlite.com. And now back to the show. Moving on, let's talk about patent stuff again. So last week we talked about the fact that there was kind of there was a court settlement, I think, between GoPro and Insta360, where either side said that they won.
That's fine.
The reality is that, of course, in the end, Insta360 can continue to sell their action cams just as they were, the ones that were in the market, and GoPro has the right to say that an older Insta360 infringed their patent. That's it. So nothing really changes.
I think in reality they both lost. They probably lost a lot of money.
Yeah, I think in this case,
it's crazy.
Yeah. But now DJI sued Insta360 for patent infringement, which is interesting. So apparently, this is as it happens, a lot of people who left, not a lot, but a few engineers who left DJI got hired by Insta360. And both companies are actually in Shenzhen in China, so it makes it easy for them, I guess, to go to the court. But you can see, it's an escalating patent battle between two Chinese giants, because we know also Insta360 is now actually a public company. DJI is not, but it's arguably a much bigger company.
I won't call Insta360 a giant yet. Not yet, but...
They're big. They're big, and they have a big market cap by now after they entered the stock exchange. So they have a lot more money to spend on those things. But the the patents that are at the center of this dispute are 6 patents that are spanning drone flight control, structural design, and image processing technologies. So according to reports from Chinese outlets, DJI alleges that some of these patents were based on inventions made by former DJI employees. So basically they're saying that those are Insta360 patents that were granted to Insta360 and should not have been granted because they were invented by people who used to work for DJI. So under Chinese intellectual property law, innovations created within 1 year of an employee's departure, if related to their previous job at DJI, are legally considered to be the property of the original employer. And we're talking about apparently very short time spans here when those people literally started working at Insta360. So they want those patents actually transferred from Insta360 to themselves, to DJI. And they've also accused Insta360 to fail to properly disclose the inventors associated with the disputed patent. So they're saying that basically they're in the patent application, they're trying to hide who the persons are who made it in order to kind of prevent this from happening.
I just want to say that all those allegations, it's a pity. We should have also somehow put into the article, there is a response from the Insta360 CEO and founder.
It's there.
As a video?
No, not the video.
Okay,
oh, there's a video of that? Yeah.
There is a video of that, and I think there's a video, and this is quite interesting.
Yeah, I mentioned it. So he replied publicly on Weibo, this Chinese social media platform, and of course refutes all of this. So basically,
in a very militant way, I would say.
Yeah, on the flight control patent, Liu Jing Kang, I hope I say his name correctly. That's the CEO and founder of Insta360. He states on the flight control patent that it covers a one-button FPV-style building dive effect and that the idea originated with him personally. He added that the feature was never implemented in any Insta360 product due to current flight restrictions. And regarding DJI's accusation that Insta360 concealed the identities of patent inventors, he explains that this is standard practice. I don't know Chinese patent laws. I mean, I just don't know Western patents. Usually it always has the name of the person, not the company, but the persons who actually invented something, because of course it's important. And according to him, many Insta360 patents initially hide inventor names during domestic filings and only disclose them during the PCT international filing phase in order to protect employees from being targeted by headhunters. All right, so yeah, it's a back and forth, and of course it's gonna enter the court. I mean, it is the broader picture here. Of course, is that we just reported last week about the introduction of the DJI Avata 360 camera from the drone. 360 drone from DJI, which of course is a direct competitor to the Anti-Gravity AI1. Anti-Gravity is a company incubated by Insta360. So yeah, there is a direct connection here, of course, and they completely undercutting it in terms of price, but also has much better specs. I mean, we haven't compared them directly, but it looks like, you know, that the specs really speak for DJI here and also the price. And so let's see how it goes.
Can I give a tip to both founders and CEOs? A very naive one, but guys, how about talking to each other? You are in the same town.
I think it's a bit late for that, isn't it?
Well, instead of just throwing money on lawsuits and throwing mud at each other, try to talk to each other. Maybe you will find a common ground, and at the end, it's just a pity if you both consider yourself as a leading in our industry. I think it's like get a mediator or something before you go like, I don't know, 100 million. Yeah, you think it's too late? Am I too naive?
You're a bit naive here, and also I don't care so much because I care for the filmmakers, and I think we're only benefiting from this because finally DJI is getting some competition in the drone space, and I love that. I think that the Avata 360 probably wouldn't exist if the Anti-Gravity A1 would be here, or vice versa. I don't know who started developing this, but assuming Insta360 originally being a company making 360 cameras, maybe they had the idea first, I don't know, but now we have the same thing from DJI. We probably wouldn't have had it.
Yeah, but that money presumably this whatever millions and millions of dollars would have gone to hopefully R&D, and instead
I don't think
they're
so.
going. I don't know.
I mean, now they just simply have to try harder. First of all, now anti-gravity is under pressure to have something more affordable with 360 camera. I mean, first of all, we have to see whether 360 cameras will really catch on, to be honest. I mean, it's still kind of a niche thing. Of course, it's nice to have this ability to change this perspective in post, but how big of a deal is it? Like it's almost like 360 cameras in general have never kind of replaced normal action cameras. That's what right. Insta360 originally tried to do. If you remember the first cameras they brought out, they wanted to kind of say that you don't need a normal action camera anymore because you basically film 360 degrees and then you can decide in post. But that doesn't, of course, we know that, GoPro, for different reasons, their market share is shrinking. But we also saw then DJI and then also Insta360 come out with a traditional action camera. So they at some point must have realized, well, 360 is not going to replace them.
Yeah.
And I think it's, like with a drone, it's the same. I mean, the 360 drones will not replace normal drones. Of course not. But it is something that remains to be seen if it's going to be like a widespread thing that people will use. I can see the usage for that, of course, but a lot of it, I think, depends on software. And in this case, right now, Insta360 just has the better software to do those things, but it's just a matter of time until DJI catches up with, like the software post-production kind of way of doing, like fixing, kind of defining the angle of whatever 360 you shot with your drone in a proper way.
If we're already talking about DJI and drones, I think it's worth noting because you guys really ask us if we know if B&H is actually featuring the new drone, and the answer is yes. At the beginning, for 1 or 2 days, it was not there, and then now it is here. We also got an email blast, which means B&H is fully behind the drone. So it's quite interesting. I thought that they kind of stopped altogether to sell DJI drones, but obviously I'm wrong, and I'm happy for our friends in the US that they can still buy this drone. And it's the same prices in Europe, by the way.
Yeah, what it's curious a little bit because DJI officially says that you cannot buy it through official channels.
I don't know.
That's what they said.
I can't believe it. B&H is not an official channel.
I'm just saying what DJI says. You cannot buy this drone through official channels in the US, and also B&H and CVP both don't sell the drone alone because a lot of people already have RC2 or the other controllers. The drone alone is not available, but you can, like in Europe, for example, you can buy it for 459 euros, including VAT. So if you already have an RC2 and you don't need another one, then that's not even available in the US. But yeah, you're right. I mean, the including controller price is kind of the same. So that's quite interesting how they managed to do this. And I'm happy, actually, that people are able to buy it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Good. Moving on to Sony. So Sony officially announced that they are suspending nearly all memory card sales. We already talk quite often about the global storage shortage, which is thanks to AI usage. Basically, AI giants buying up all the available storage that's out there and RAM. So RAM prices have skyrocketed, SSD prices, and also now hard disk prices are going up quite significantly. I think the average bar of RAM for a computer now costs 5 times as much than a year ago. We reported about this quite early already by the end of last year, because after talking to
Roman from Angelbird,
the CEO of Angelbird, he actually warned us that this was going to happen because he could see it, I think, with suppliers. So we dived into the subject and wrote about it. That's also linked in this article. But so basically what's exactly suspended now from Sony, so they only published this on their Japanese website, and it really covers a long list of products. So basically, it's all 4 of their CF Express Type A TUF cards. Just for people to remind them, this is the cards you need if you shoot with an FX3, FX6, is any kind of new alpha camera. If you want to access the high frame rates and the XAVC SI codec, and especially the slow and quick motion functions of that. You cannot use an SD card for that in the best codec. You have to use CF Express Type A. All the original Sony TAF cards are affected. That's spanning, the smallest one is 240 gigs up to 1,920 gigs. Then also the CF Express Type B cards, but only the 240 and 480 gigabyte capacities, and also 9 different SDXC and SDHC models, which includes the TAF branded SFG series 64, 128, 256 gigs, and also basically all of them. I mean, it's like a SFM series, which is 128, 256, and 512 gigs. I think there might only just be, do they even have a 1 terabyte SD card? I don't know. But I mean, it's basically all those cards. Only 2 product lines appear to have been spared, which is a single 960 gigabyte CF Express Type B card and an entry-level CF UC series SD card, which are slower UHS 1 models, which might be simply because they still have stock of them. So basically all of those cards are not available anymore, and you have to look for alternatives, because it probably, I mean, to be honest, the Sony cards, they came down in price quite a bit, but they were still quite a bit more expensive than the Angelbird competitors and also from other manufacturers. So maybe they just realized, well, we can't, if to keep their big margins, they would have to make them so much more expensive that they wouldn't even be available. They couldn't compete with the competition anymore. I don't know.
But I would look beyond what Sony thinks about margin and so on. Sometimes when we see this type of news, we go like, okay, it doesn't concern me, and what can happen? But I think this is already, maybe not a red, but kind of an orange alert that something is obviously changing. And from what we are hearing, there is a real stress because some manufacturers, if they don't secure or secured in the past some of the nano memory chips that are inside or whatever, they're having a problem. So this is something that we definitely have to follow up.
We'll probably ask some questions also at NAB just to find out where the feeling is there.
Well, I hope we have cards to record on. I'm joking. But that's
just live stream.
Just film. We move to film. Yeah,
exactly. No, but Sony is also explicitly quoting the global shortage of semiconductors and also other factors such as helium. I mean, they're not saying this explicitly, but we saw some other reports that it's also connected to a helium shortage. So apparently you need this gas to produce certain, for some chip making processes, and that's because of the Iran crisis. Helium is in a shortage now as well and become much more expensive. So we're also quoting some alternatives, of course, from other manufacturers such as Angelbird, ProGrade Digital, and Wise Advanced. They remain available for now, but we can see already the pressure, and we already see some prices going up. So let's see what happens. We can tell this story got a lot of reach on our social channels, so people are getting nervous about that. So if you need memory, you maybe should act fast, because there's writing on the wall that this will not ease anytime soon. I mean, so far this spending surge for AI purposes is just increasing, and it doesn't look like it's going to stop anytime soon. So this crisis will probably continue into 27, 28. Yeah.
That's. I wanted to joke and say that we should revive our CF Express Type B line of cards that we had in cooperation with Angelbird. But then I remembered suddenly that actually, where do we get the cards from?
Well, we can talk to them. Maybe
we can talk to them. But maybe there's something in the attic.
They have it somewhere, but they were literally sold out. Yeah. Okay. Let's move on to a new course that we launched on MZed. So this is something it's been an interesting way sometimes how connections come from all those events we go to. So I think I've talked about this before. So last year in June, we were invited to the Build Expo in New York, and I was invited to give a talk. And what I did is I had a talk, which I mentioned before, which is called Ready Creator 1, basically talking about efficient filmmaking, like using AI tools not to replace your creativity, but you make yourself more efficient and faster, and just remaining the creative in charge, but basically use it for everything around it, whether it's for idea finding, but also researching and shot listing. And in the terms of shot listing, during my research, I came across an online tool called Shotcraft. Didn't know anybody behind it, but I found it interesting. So it's this website where you can literally feed this tool a script, and then it will kind of spit out a shot list. And it sounds very, oops, sorry, that's loud. So this, it sounds like something that you can do with any kind of ChatGPT or LLM, but it's not, because you can tell when you use it, this is made by a filmmaker. You have drop-down menus to change specific things about it. It's very intuitive. It can work with images. You can take the images yourself, combine them into it. They now added some kind of image generation. So either you can just hand draw like a storyboard, or you also can use image generation built into it. But it's very intuitive and it works really well. So I only mentioned them in my talk. And then after my presentation, because I liked what they did, I just used the demo version. And after my presentation, I talked to a couple of people who were in the audience. And one of the guys there, I forgot his name, he came up to me and said, actually, he has been using Shotcraft. And if I know the guys behind this, and it's Leland and Victoria Crane. They are Leland is a cinematographer, and he leads the company together with his wife. They're both, I think, in New York. And so basically, like he just mentioned that, and then next thing, come back to Europe and get an email from them. And they were just thanking me for mentioning them and blah, blah, blah. So we jumped on a call. And what we realized, they're a really small company. They've been trying hard to come up with a tool that makes the life of a cinematographer easier when finding shot lists. Basically, very often as a DP, if you work in narrative, you get handed a script. And then, of course, you have to break it down into shot lists together with your director. And the beginning of this process, very much like the post-production process, when you start the edit, is a bit cumbersome, because you know how it is in post-production. You have, like terabytes of footage sometimes, and then just to sort everything out before you actually get to the point where you can be creative. This assembly edit phase is what annoys me most. That's why we have tools like Eddy AI and some others that should help with this process. But in pre-production, this has been a little bit neglected, of course, and that's where what they tackled with this tool. And I became very interested, and we had a long chat, and then actually agreed on, well, why not, Leland, make a course for MZed talking about shot listing. Not kind of, we don't want to, it's not a promotion thing for Shotcraft. It's just what is important for somebody who's starting out. If you are working on a shot list, what's important to look at? And that's what he did. So basically, he created a course, which is very short. It's I think, it's relatively short. And he's explaining exactly how to, with some famous and not so famous examples of how to create a shot list based on a script. And 90% of that course is just how to do that. And at the end, of course, we invited him also to explain his tool, Shotcraft, on how to actually work with this. So it's quite basic. I think but it's also very useful for people who've worked in the field for quite a long time. He talks about different shot sizes and kind of the nomenclature around that, and how to come up with a visual breakdown of a script. So basically making the jump from pre-production to production. That's why we call the course Before You Roll, the Shot Listing Essentials. And at the end, he also explains his tool, Shotcraft. So just can recommend this course.
For those who want to actually just understand better, there's a promo for the course?
There's a promo, there's a trailer, and it's now available on MZed. Just check out the article. We have a long article explaining the course, and also with some famous examples. He's also using a lot of famous examples in the course. And just check it out. It's now on MZed.com as part of the MZed Pro subscription, but also a long explanation article on CineD, which is linked in the show notes. Good. Let's move on to a new camera, the Panasonic LUMIX TZ or TZ300 or ZS300. What is that, Johnny?
Look, before we even start talking about cameras, did you notice today is what? We're recording this one day before publication, so it's April 1st today. Tomorrow is, by the time that you guys see this, it's April 2nd. A quiz. How many new cameras did you see already this year? Now it's April, beginning of April. Since the beginning of the year, how many cameras were introduced?
Ooh, that's a good question. How many cameras were introduced in 2026?
Should I help you?
0?
2.
2?
And that's one of them. One
What's
was
the
by
first
Ricoh.
Ricoh?
Ricoh, yeah, you know, they are very good, very big in this kind of street photography.
There wasn't any other camera?
Nothing.
Not even a
Nothing.
compact?
You know, it doesn't matter how much you can look under the carpet, you will not find any
You
announcement.
Sure?
Yeah,
interesting.
It's such a slow beginning for this year.
Mm.
And that's why I think every time that a new camera is being announced, we kind of like, let's see what's coming up. And then the Panasonic comes with the LUMIX TZ300 or ZS300, depending where you are in the world. Compact camera, 1-inch sensor, 15 times zooms. And you know what? Actually, it builds on the foundation of a camera from 2018. And
is that a friendly way of saying it's the same?
It's a very friendly way to say it's almost the same. It's cost more and it features less.
Nice. Not nice.
Not nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was really hoping for Panasonic to introduce something a bit different. Those kind of cameras, of course, we're calling it the renaissance of compact cameras, and 1-inch sensor is really nice for so many. I mean, even the Osmo Pocket 3 is with 1-inch sensor. Sony has their own camera and so on. 1-inch is good for so many ways, and that could have been a very nice camera. The only thing is Panasonic decided to kill the EVF in this camera. And for people like me, and I know for sure for many of you, and this is not just an obsession with EVF, it's literally a tool that helps to judge exposure and framing and so on, and nothing to do with my age.
No, I also love viewfinders. I wouldn't want to miss a viewfinder.
I don't know. They probably...
Maybe people who don't want to use viewfinders never shoot outdoors in the sun.
No, they should, but some of them are maybe used to working with mobile phones. And of course, with a mobile phone, that's what you have. You have only a screen.
I think it has a lot to do also with gimbals. I think a lot of younger people who really only started shooting maybe in the last 10 years or so were so used working with gimbals that they kind of got used not to using viewfinders. I don't know.
I have a whole theory, and I can even point a finger at a certain company, which I will not do this right now. But people were trained in some way to work without an EVF, which is it's a pity.
Point the finger. Who?
I can't even tell you. But if you look a bit, if you look at the history, no, that's a bit dangerous. I don't want even to point into direction, but there is a reason why the younger generation is really working with monitors or with LCD screens, whatever, and much less with EVF. All I ask is, and I'm trying to stay positive here, for all the respected companies, please consider bringing back the EVF. This is an essential tool. It should be part of any camera, basically.
So basically we have the same camera as, what is it, the TC200?
The 200, yeah, from 2018.
And then they just took away the viewfinder, and I think they also replaced the micro USB with a USB-C, and that's it.
This is
the lens the same?
From what the information I gave her, the lens is the same.
And it costs more money.
Maybe the BSI sensor is a bit newer, so it's a bit more light sensitive. Those things are, it's easy to check with Panasonic, but all in all, it's a pity. It's a missed opportunity.
Well, also because
even the video, the 4K you can shoot only up to 15 minutes, which is fine. I mean, all of those things, nobody is expecting a camera in this size to be perfect. And I understand if because of heat generation, you can only do 15 minutes of 4K videos, fine. But if you already bring into the market something new after such a long time, I would have personally appreciate if it's something that I want to buy and not like, okay.
Well, it seems like maybe, we never know what's going on, but it's like you said, it feels like lately, last year or 2 or 3, as a renaissance of those compact cameras. I mean, we see Fujifilm doing really well with various models, actually also interchangeable lens models like the X100 and so on, and 5. But really small cameras, basically, that are considered compact cameras. And this used to be cool, and then they all forgot about it, or kind of discontinued them because they thought everybody's jumping on larger sensors, but then also, of course, the camera package becomes bigger. And now it's all about lifestyle cameras that have different purposes. I mean, we even have the GFX100 RF, which is like a fixed lens medium format sensor, which is insane. But it seems, like there must be a reason for them to do this, and they've identified a market for that. So, I mean, there's a few camera companies that almost completely exited this segment as well, and Panasonic apparently still has quite a few cameras with fixed lens in the lineup, but there are other companies that have completely exited this market. As far as I remember, there's no compact cameras from Canon anymore.
No, that's not true, Nino.
No?
They have one camera which is extremely, it's actually quite hard to get it, but it's extremely popular, and it just got a special edition. This is the Canon,
PowerShot.
The PowerShot, from the PowerShot series. And I think every manufacturer, they're all watching what the others are doing, basically. And they see the success of Fujifilm, they see the success of the Lumix S9, which is not with a built-in lens, but still it's a very compact camera. And
but it's been, I'm just saying it's been neglected, because I think a lot of those models are aging from different manufacturers, and maybe they just feel compelled to have something against Fujifilm, who have really been doing a lot in this field.
Ricoh is doing a lot. Fujifilm is doing a lot. I don't think that there's some companies that we don't even talk about, Yashica and whatever, which is now a sticker brand, but they have a whole line of new cameras with a built-in lens. It looks like a older camera, but they're also quite small. I'm just saying, this is also, if you look at SIPA, which is the Japanese institute that gathers like the mother roof for all those Japanese companies, you see that in terms of growth, mirrorless cameras are still selling more, but in terms of growth, compact cameras are doing the best.
Okay.
And
Sony also had the ZV-1 and so on. Yeah,
there's a whole line from Sony. All the Japanese manufacturers are looking at that. All of them are aware. I'm actually quite curious to see where this market will go to, because it's a combination. I think it's not enough today to bring a compact camera to the market. You need to have a certain twist. And
also an integration to kind of get the stuff easy on social media, I think. I think a lot of people using this now are younger generation, who we've heard from Victor from Fujifilm, who told me that it's basically a lot of people who want a less complex device than a phone. They want the simplicity. They want something that only takes images, but then want the freedom to also share it, of course, but not instantaneously. Kind of instantaneously. But
Also here, there's a lot of room for innovation. Hopefully we as CineD can do something about it.
All right, so let's move on from this new / not so new Panasonic camera, but at least
it is new. We wish that it would have been that the upgrade would have been even greater.
Yeah. All right, so there's a Chinese company, I think SG Image, that just released an autofocus lens 35mm f2.2 Pancake.
Yeah, so it's a bit hard to follow. SG Image, for us, it's all new. This company is relatively new. But when I was at CP Plus, I saw them together. I can't remember with other more established Chinese company. Maybe this is kind of a spin-off of the same, a bit hard to say. But obviously they're trying to get established by introducing some stuff which is very affordable, lightweight, small, but still capable of producing nice images. And Omri, one of our writers, wrote about this autofocus 35mm f2.2 lens. And I think he summarized it actually already at the beginning of the article. It combines in a very nice way. It's a compact Pancake design. It has a relatively fast aperture. Autofocus, it is for full frame, and the price is almost unbeatable. It's $149 for the lens, and if you want the lens with a hood, that will cost $159. The design is quite special, and this specific lens, we just talked about compact cameras, the Lumix S9 is a great example. It's a small camera, and I think that currently Panasonic doesn't really have their own compact lenses for that camera, because at the end what you really want to do is put it in the pocket. So such a lens will be such a good companion for cameras in this size, or I don't know, even the Sony A7C or the Nikon ZF, all of those small cameras. I mean, we've been advocating small equipment in general for small cameras for a very long time. Doesn't matter if it's a matte box or lenses, tripod, and so on. It all has to go together, and I'm happy to see that at least some companies are doing so. And especially when it comes to Chinese manufacturers, there are so many of them right now, and the competition is so stiff. So I'm happy to see that somebody is doing something a little bit different.
What lens mounts do we have for this?
The lens mounts, I have it here. 1 second.
Well, I see the images here. Well, it's apparently L mount, E mount, Z mount,
E mount, Z mount, and L mount. And if any of the respective manufacturers are listening to us, guys, please try to license the mount, because otherwise it might bite you really, really hard. Sooner or later, Sony, Nikon, all those companies, Canon or Leica, they will all chase you. They simply want things to be registered.
And if somebody from Canon is listening, we still need full frame RF lenses also from other manufacturers. Please just give us the freedom. It will actually sell you more cameras. But we'll hope that this will happen at some point, because so many people love the Canon cameras but are frustrated by the lens choice, because they just cannot get anything other than the Canon original lens, which arguably are great lenses. But of course, you want choice.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
Canon is listening.
Good.
They're listening. They're aware of this. They're listening.
I hope they're also executing. Good. Moving on. DNG, the digital negative image file format that was introduced over 20 years ago, and I think really pioneered by Adobe in terms of pushing it into the market in their own interest, because of course they didn't also, I think they wanted a way out. I remember still the time with the original Lightroom, they wanted to get out of the, they were always forced to constantly update their raw image file processor in Photoshop and Lightroom, because every time a new camera was released, it's almost every time a new raw image file format was introduced. They still need to do that, and that hasn't really changed. But that's why they pushed, I remember the time, for DNG, because that's something that is like a standardized raw format, which also, of course, grants backwards compatibility and kind of for archiving purposes. But so what now? What has changed, Johnny? Now it's an international standard?
So the way I want to look at this, it seems like almost like a personal story by an Australian photographer by the name Robert Edwards. The gentleman asked a question in a very popular forum at 2004, about can Adobe make like a raw format for photos, and Adobe people actually answered to him what he didn't know, that they're already working on something. And obviously, so many years later, Adobe kind of released it, and then ISO took it under the wings, and now it became an international recognized way of like a format.
It's funny that Thomas Knoll actually answered. He's one of the original makers of Photoshop.
Okay,
So
I mean, there are a lot of details in this story. I mean, I wish that we had the chance to, maybe in the future, to talk to Robert Edwards himself. I think it's one of those things. Imagine 20 years later, you see how something that you wanted. It's almost like looking back to the future in a way. So now it's an open standard. Now it's under the ISO.
Do we know why it took so long?
I don't know what to tell you. If those big organizations are really working very slow, I can't tell you. But instead of going, but let's say differently. Since then, every manufacturer has its own raw format. DNG is the only way to standardize things. Of course, it's maybe not that efficient. It's basically a quite large file, but still, I think this is being recognized by most of the softwares today, if not all of them. And of course, what is interesting for us as filmmakers, there is the Cinema DNG. This is literally taking 24, 25 frames per second, full DNG, and companies like Blackmagic Design or Sigma using it, or some of them used to use it. And I don't see any company going backward and suddenly giving up on the compressed RAW. But still, it's good to know that if any company in the past had an excuse why not to use Cinema DNG because it's under the Adobe supervision, let's say, now this doesn't exist anymore. So who knows? Maybe, if you guys think why this specific RAW format can be beneficial for cinema, I'm very happy if you will add some comments, and hopefully the manufacturers will see, and maybe they will decide to revive something that they kind of already forgot about.
Yeah, just as a reminder for people that there used to be Cinema DNG in the Blackmagic cameras, like you mentioned, and the reason why it was removed. We've never had a confirmation, but there was an interview with Grant Petty, and he stated that legal threats over patent infringement forced them to remove Cinema DNG from their cameras to avoid litigation. There is, of course, the general assumption that, again, it's just an assumption, that Red Digital Cinema is behind this because of their infamous patent for compressed RAW recording inside a camera. Now, Sigma actually, originally, they kept the Cinema DNG support because it recorded uncompressed Cinema DNG, which falls outside of Red's patent. So let's see. Let's see if now there's maybe a way to add it back in. I don't think... because a lot of people I talk to still miss Cinema DNG from Blackmagic cameras. A lot of them.
Interesting.
It is a compressed, the Blackmagic RAW is a compressed RAW format, and for a lot of different purposes, actually, of course, having Cinema DNG is more useful.
Okay, so now there is no excuse anymore.
Yeah, especially if you have recording media now, because they have moved to CF Express Type B finally, that is not limiting that as well, right? There was always this thing with overheating and just too much data on the old C Fast cards, but I guess that the new CF Express Type B might be capable of actually saving it. Although maybe not at 12K from a... so let's see.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, let's see what happens if this will actually... Maybe it's a question for Blackmagic Design. Probably won't get an answer, but it's worth asking them at NAB if this is something that they're looking to. Maybe we'll run into Grant Petty, who knows? So we do at NAB. Good, moving on. Fujifilm GFX100 II, firmware 2.5. What is this about?
So Fujifilm or FUJINON has a very nice lens. Is the GF3290mm power zoom large format lens, and I think this lens, one of the main thing here, that it's very like the price is very competitive. I think it is. Let me just confirm. Yeah, $6,000 for such a lens. And you know what? Of course, the high end FUJINON is the Premista lenses, but if you work for TV, if you work for social media or YouTube or whatever, this lens can really do a lot. Yeah, the quality is very, very nice for samples that I saw. Now, finally, the GFX100 II is supporting this lens. So those two can work together.
It didn't work before, or you just couldn't use the power zoom?
The power zoom is very important, but also matters of reading the data and everything. Now it's all there. Just if you do this, don't forget to upgrade the firmware of the lens too. And this firmware was released late last year. So first upgrade the firmware of the lens, and then upgrade the firmware of the camera. Now the only thing that left is to wait for Fujifilm to actually upgrade the GFX100 II to do OpenGate. And then we have a GFX 855 at home. Almost, I'm joking.
In the pocket, in the big pocket.
That's right.
Yeah. So let's see what happens. ZGCINE a Chinese company, just released new Sony MPF batteries with USB-C and DTAP ports, which is worth mentioning because it's still something that's not taken for granted from a lot of the other manufacturers. So yeah, very useful to have both on NPF batteries, just more choice. I mean, NPF still, I mean, it's used to be a Sony standard. I think the patent expired long ago, so everybody can make those batteries, and they're still very, very common to be used in some cameras, but especially also monitors and so on. And of course, you can have plates for all kinds of different devices to use NPF instead of V-mount or gold mount. And just having USB-C and DTAP on those batteries is useful. I mean, DTAP has become kind of normal, not normal-ish on a lot of those batteries, but I still see a lack of USB-C ports.
No, there is a USB-C port here, which is
really
I'm
great. Saying, but in general, I'm seeing a lack, so it's nice that they also have a USB-C port added now because, of course, I mean, it just gives you flexibility to power different stuff or even just charge your phone. So
I just hope that you can actually power something with this DTAP, because I really wonder if this battery is strong enough to power anything that has a DTAP built in.
Yeah. Well, it says 45 watts. So that's the battery. So let's hope so. I mean, the maximum output of the USB-C is 20 volts bidirectional. So yeah. It's okay. I mean, it's. I think it's nothing earth-shattering at all, but it's just nice to have more options with MPF batteries. And then let's talk about rushes. So yeah, we talked about Vimeo quite a lot over the last few months. There was a long article that I wrote on their acquisition by Bending Spoons and all that, like history of. A lot of people being a little bit upset with Bending Spoons because, of course, they also took over things like Filmic Pro and so on, and then introduced a subscription. And now they also took over Vimeo and kind of took this public company that really was a penny stock private, and then made it, their daughter company. And what they do usually, they go into companies and kind of, fire a lot of people and make it more efficient in a way. But so far, I mean, some people arguably have said that, of course, at least they keep the companies going, which is fair enough. I mean, like also WeTransfer and so on. A lot of companies like Filmic Pro, I think, would have been in a difficult spot anyway because of like Blackmagic camera app and so on, which was free. At least it still exists. At least it's going, even though a lot of people lose their jobs and they add a lot of efficiency. Let's see what happens to Vimeo, if they raise prices or not. Or I think they already have, no?
Yeah.
So anyway, under this article, we had a guy called Guy Loftus, comment, and he was very active. And he was like, usually we're like, nobody, like people spamming about their own products, I did this, but he seemed like really genuine as somebody who was working by himself as a developer on making an alternative to Vimeo, and he was very friendly with everybody. So it's really great that he was taking active feedback from our community on his project, which at the time was really bare bones, and he calls it Rushes. And it's supposed to be a alternative to Vimeo, which is bringing back the old Vimeo, right?
We have to try and talk to this guy. I have for me, he's like an entrepreneur. Yeah, he obviously had an idea, and to replace Vimeo, he managed to execute it. And this is really a shout out for us guys to support him. He's so responsive. Also, when people have had some comments, immediately answer. And he looks like very determined to pull this thing out in the most, like in the greatest way he can. One thing to know: this is a EU, it's all EU under the EU laws. Yeah. So that means that privacy and everything is regulated even better than if it was a US company.
Of course, we also under the GDPR, which is like a very strict way of handling personal data in the EU. Also when it comes to newsletters and so on.
Exactly. So this is, besides being like a Vimeo type, you really try to add more features to this So it's kind of a combination of Frame.io and Vimeo and like a collaborative thing. So this is something that we as a company certainly have to look closer at what he's offering.
I love how he writes on the front page of his platform Rushes. Rushes is a community and video hosting platform designed for filmmakers by filmmakers. We're based in Europe. We'll never let an AI train on your work, and we aren't an evil mega corporation. That's great.
Yeah.
Good to know. Yeah.
So just check it out, guys. I mean, we will certainly do, and we will also try to jump on a call and maybe dedicate a podcast together with Guy and just hear about his journey from idea to execution.
And it's lovely. I mean, you can tell that he's really inspired by the original Vimeo, which is kind of no fuss. It's completely plain in a sense that really featuring the work and comments, and of course some features that should be there, like copying link and saving and so on. So it's really bringing back that feed. I think that's the idea, because on Vimeo also a lot of people complained that also in the EU, and Vimeo said that was already before they were taking over bending spoons, they got rid of the feed, the Vimeo feed that people actually loved, which was a non-algorithmic way originally as showing stuff you follow from filmmakers, and you cannot see this in the EU anymore. It doesn't exist anymore, and also staff picks are not being done from any EU filmmakers anymore. I think it still exists as a thing, but it's only, I guess, US and rest of the world and Asia or whatever. But we can't see feeds anymore on Vimeo. So it's kind of the original way of looking at stuff on Vimeo is simply gone. And he's trying to bring that back and many other things. So also we have to mention pricing because it's ridiculously cheap, actually. I mean, watching is free, but it's $8 a month, or I think $79 a year for the annual. So it's really in comparison to what Vimeo charges now. Of course, they might have more features that go into more enterprise. It's a lot of enterprise stuff. But
he was very quick to respond and already add to the free section the ability to upload one video that's based on some comments that our audience had in the site, which is nice. Again, that's part of him being very responsive and very fast, because of course you want to see how it works for you from the upload and so on, and also playback and playback quality. So
we should reach out to him and just talk to him also about, he must have felt an urge to do this because maybe he was a Vimeo user before. I don't know. Let's find out.
From frustration to
execution.
Yeah.
Good. Let's move on to the last story of this week, which is IronGlass. Now, IronGlass, I think originally Ukrainian company, are now offering rehoused Canon FD AIR lenses. Vintage character compact package. What can we say about this? I mean, of course, the Canon FD lenses, extremely popular, have been, I think originally when the red cameras came out, have become extremely popular for especially commercials and so on. And then a lot of companies, I think that at some point they were 20 times the price of what they used to be. And just people love the look. But of course, they were old photo lenses with the typical problems. And a lot of companies have started to rehouse them. So what's special about the IronGlass ones?
With IronGlass, it's always the same. You see what they do, and then you go like, do I have enough money in the bank because I want to buy those lenses? Yeah,
pricey, yeah.
But yeah, so they will have there are 6 lenses in this 20mm f2.8, 28 2 f2, 35mm f2, 50mm f1.4, 85mm f1.8, and 100mm f2.8, and those are available in different mount options. Canon RF, Fujifilm GF, quite interesting. That means for the medium format. Leica L, Leica M, Nikon Z, and Sony E. But at the end of the day, each piece will cost $2,250 US. So those will be shipped in the first quarter of 2027. And I think people will always complain about how much does it actually cost to rehouse a lens?
Yeah, well, the question is, I mean, of course, they are really about mechanical. They want them mechanically identical, and I think people shouldn't forget that because Canon FD lenses are used on so many high-end sets, you cannot afford to have one of those lenses break. So, like if you work with old lenses that you bought on the flea market or something, there's a danger that they just will simply fail because they're old and the mechanics are not there anymore, even though you like the look.
Yeah.
And the whole goal about this company is just putting them into mechanically consistent housing. Also, of course, give you proper gears, the travel distance, and so on. But also make them durable. That's the thing, and it doesn't matter in the end anymore if they're 2,200, because if they end up in a rental house, they're gonna rent them all the time, because we know that how popular FD lenses are.
When we've been to the UK at the CVP shop, where they do the stage, I saw those lenses. They look beautiful, and they're very small. And for me, if I could, that would be an end user product and not rentable. Yeah, because I would love to have a set like this, a set of lenses like this. It's just a matter of pricing. So who knows? Maybe this is something that can be.
Actually, it's just expensive because it's a manual process. I mean, they literally need to get those old lenses and do this one by one, and it just takes time, and that's what adds the cost, right? So it's very hard to argue with that. And it's not that there are so many other rehousing companies that do it in this quality for less, because I think it's just the amount of time that goes into this also.
But at the end, if you want to buy the whole set, it can cost you between 10 to 13,000 euro if you do the calculation, and that's a lot of money.
Yeah. Okay, so let's wrap it up here. I think that's enough for the week. And thanks for everything. Thanks for watching, and see you next week. Don't forget to like and subscribe, leave a comment, email us at podcast@cined.com. Don't forget to also subscribe to Apple Podcasts and Spotify. We started working now on hopefully getting the video version of the podcast also on other platforms, because right now it's just on YouTube, but hopefully within the next few weeks or months, let's see, we'll also have it available on Apple Podcasts again, because they've just enhanced their video functionality, and then people can just watch, and when you don't have time to watch anymore, you lock your phone and it immediately continues the audio stream. So that's very useful. So we'll look into that and how to achieve that if you are listening to us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Okay, hear you next week.
Bye.
Bye.